Stewardship podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Now, listen, that I know that we are normally here on Thursdays, right? But yesterday was such a busy day. I also became a Mimi for the second time. Yay! So now I have a grandson and a granddaughter. And so there's just a lot, going on yesterday. So, but we're here today. We're here live. So, welcome to the Radical Godly Stewardship Podcast. This is where heaven's economy collides with Earth's assignments. I'm your host, Dr. Lexi Johnson, your financial rebel, your kingdom disruptor, and your accountability coach into obedience. Around here, we don't beg God for money. No, that's not what we do. We align, we obey, we produce, we multiply, we dominate. And if you're ready to steward well, think boldly, and build kingdom wealth, then let's dive in right after this intro. Hey there, wealth saving and investing. And I'm First Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, saying that finances is not a set forgiveness. Hey there. So welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Listen, right now, people are very distracted. I have been saying this for some time, right? We get distracted by outrage cycles. We get, okay, case in point, very recently, something going down. I'm not going to get into it with voting rights and things like that. So there's outrage, right? All kinds of opinions. People get distracted by that. People are, and I'm not saying that these topics, shouldn't be addressed or, anything like that, but people like go deep down a hole and they get distracted with this for days by these things, right? So they're distracted by outrage cycles, they're distracted by politics, they're distracted by culture wars, they're distracted by viral clips, people are distracted by emotional headlines. And meanwhile, the global economic system is quietly shifting underneath them. And most people don't even realize it. And so, this is why discernment matters, because kingdom citizens are not called to paranoia. No, and we are not called to distraction. We're not called to any of those things, right? We are called to awareness, we are called to stewardship, we are called to positioning. And so today we're going to talk about three major shifts that are happening right now. And there are more. So I think I'm going to do like a part two next week. We're going to talk about three major shifts that are happening right now that are quietly reshaping the economy. The first we're going to talk about is China and the global power shift. The second, we're going to talk about the hidden energy war behind AI and infrastructure. And then we're going to talk about commercial real estate problem that nobody wants to talk about, right? And more importantly, we're going to talk about what these things mean for your money. Because I can hear you right now, and you're saying, what does this have to do with me? And what does this have to do with my pockets? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about what this means for your future, and of course, we're going to talk about how we should be positioning ourselves, okay? But first, as usual, we're going to do our stewardship check-in. And before we do that, I just want to say, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the replay, I am so glad you're here. Do me a favor, if you don't mind, if you feel led, tag someone in the comments and let them know we're here, or share this on your platform, so because people need to know the things that we are talking about here, right? I have been teaching my financial rebellion um, course, and we just completed week 9. It's a 12-week course. And so many of the students are just saying, wow, they never realized how much of this stuff is really impacting their pockets, right? They go on, this is not the type of thing that they pay attention to, but from now on, they will, right? Because they want to be prepared and they want to make the right moves ahead of time and not just react. Okay. So, having said that, let's move into our stewardship check in. And this is the part of the show where I ask you 3 questions just for you to think about and to ask yourself. And so the first is, am I emotionally reacting to headlines, or am I strategically interpreting them? Ask yourself that question, right? What is your answer? Are you emotionally reacting, or are you strategically interpreting? The next Well, and before I ask you the next question, I'm asking this question because the loudest story is not always the most important one. And I know that we don't want to hear that, especially with some of the loud things that are going on in this moment. Some of the biggest debates going back and forth in this moment, people yelling and screaming on their social media about certain things in this moment. But a lot of times, the loudest story is not always the most important one. The second question that I want you to ask yourself is, have I trained myself to follow trends or follow money flow? Okay. Have I trained myself to follow trends or follow money flow? This is important because money leaves clues. I am constantly showing my students how to follow the money, right? Stay out of the emotional headlines, stay out of the stuff that the world wants you distracted by. Follow the money, okay? Not because we are, head over heels in love with money. No, because all of these things affect our pockets and we need to be prepared. Okay. As kingdom citizens, there are so many of us who have been called, right, to do things in the kingdom. Many things in the kingdom require money. And many of us are limited in our capacity as to what we can do sometimes because we don't have the funds. There are so many of us who are still working jobs and doing other things that God really hasn't called us to do for the sake of making money so we can pay bills and do all of these things, right? And so, therefore, it's important for us to follow the money, right? And then ask God where we are actually supposed to be in all of this so that we can we're not just going after money for ourselves, right? We're going after money for legacy, of course, but because the kingdom, there are things in the kingdom that need addressed, and some of those things take money. And we, as kingdom citizens, there are many of us who have been called to be kingdom financiers, and we're just not there because we're too busy following trends or we're too busy distracted by headlines and all kinds of things, right? The third question I want you to ask yourself is, am I building awareness of systems or only paying attention once I feel pain personally? Listen, by the time that you are feeling pain personally, it's too late. It is too late. Okay. So we need to be aware of the systems that are in place. We need to be aware of that. All right. Um, Proverbs 10:14 says that the wise store up knowledge. So this is a season to observe, this is a season to discern. And then we're not just going to observe and discern, but this is also a season for position, getting in position. All right, so let's talk about some of these things that are going on that we really aren't paying attention to because we're caught up in some other more emotional things, right? I want to talk about China very briefly, right? We're not going to do deep dives into all of these topics. My hope is that you would go back and do your research on these things, or at least pay attention, right? And as much as possible, um, independent news. I'm not a fan of, and this is just my personal opinion. I am not a fan of mainstream news at all. In fact, I stopped watching news in 2010. That's when I stopped watching news like that. Now, when you're on social media, of course, and you're scrolling and you see all kinds of headlines and you see all kinds of, whatever. And I am very picky about the articles that I click into. Um, I can, look at these and tell when a headline is just screaming, I want you to react emotionally, right? I don't pay no attention to those, right? It's not that I don't have an awareness of what's going on or that I don't think certain things should be addressed. It's just I'm not going down that rabbit hole that you want me to go down. I'm going to be over here paying attention to this, the thing that you don't want me paying attention to, right? So let's talk about China. There's a lot of talk, a lot of internet talk too, right now about China and BRICS and New World Order and de-dollarization. Okay, so if you don't know what BRICS is, this is a conglomerate, if I can call it that, of countries that have come together, and they are definitely working on a plan to um, move away from using the dollar. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but basically, that is what they're trying to do. They are trying to assert their independence financially, right? Um, they're fine. We'll talk about it more in a minute. Anyway, some people can go extreme, with all of this, but underneath the hype, there are real economic shifts that are happening. What China is actually doing, okay, they have been strategically increasing gold reserves. They're not the only country, but obviously China is one of the countries that is looking to position itself for domination, okay? So they have been strategically increasing their gold reserves. They have been strengthening trade relationships outside of the US dollar system. They have been investing heavily in AI, semiconductors, and infrastructure. I've talked about, the whole AI, race between China and the US. Um, they are expanding their influence through BRICS partnerships. Okay, so that means partnerships with the other countries that are part of BRICS. And BRICS is an acronym actually, but it's BRICS. So you should do your research on that, okay? Because this is not a conspiracy. This is economics. All right. So, what is de dollarization? It simply means that there are countries, okay, these countries, particularly the ones that are part of BRICS, that are reducing their dependence on the US dollar for trade. Okay. For decades, the dollar has dominated the global trade. But now some nations they want alternatives. Some are settling their trade in other currencies. Others are stockpiling gold instead. And so you might be asking again, well, why does this matter to me? Why does this matter to us in the United States? And here's why it matters. Because if global demand for the dollar weakens over time, which listen, it has already been weakening, okay? Slowly, it's been weakening, right? If the global demand for the dollar continues to weaken over time, it is going to affect your purchasing power. It is going to affect inflation pressure. It is going to inflate. It is going to affect inflation costs. import costs. I think I'm trying to like combine all these words, right? It is going to it is going to affect long-term financial stability, right? This doesn't mean that the dollar is disappearing tomorrow, because you got those people out there too, like the dollar is going tomorrow. It's not going tomorrow. However, the global system is shifting. Okay. The global system is shifting. And so, what do I mean when I say it's going to affect purchasing power? Well, it's going to cost more to import things because, the dollar is going to be weaker, right? So, and those costs are gonna trickle down to you one way or another, just like you're seeing now with a lot of things going on with the war and everything, and how the costs are trickling down to you and I. So this is something that we need to be paying attention to. Okay. Now, gold, like I said, many of these countries that are a part of BRICS are, stockpiling gold. They are getting their gold reserves up. And one reason that they are, and that the central banks are buying massive amounts of gold, is because gold is neutral, it's universal, it is outside of political systems. Gold has survived kingdoms, empires, currencies, governments, and nations know that. I like to say that gold and silver are God's money, right? And it's the truth, because they have been here since the beginning of time. God, when He created uh, the earth, right? Gold and silver was right in there. You can find it in Genesis. Okay. So I like to say that this is God's money, right? It ain't going nowhere. Haggai chapter 2, verse 8. And this is why I can say this is God's money. Haggai chapter 2, verse 8 says, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares Yah." Okay. He said it is his. It's his money. He ain't got nothing to do with all these other currencies. He did not, the dollar, the peso, the SETI, the naira, the whatever. He like the pula, the whatever. He like, that's y'all stuff. Y'all can have it, but the gold and the silver, that's my money. Okay. So gold and silver existed before modern banking systems, and it's going to exist after them as well. Okay. And this is why kingdom citizens have to study systems. This is why we have to understand cycles. This is why we have to avoid emotional reactions. Now, I have done um, a few episodes on gold and silver before. It's been a while, so I'll probably do one here soon. Um, but we should always, there should always be some part of our portfolio that has gold and silver, because it is a hedge and a protection. A hedge is a protection. Now, while I'm saying that, I want to also say this, right? I am not here to give you financial advisor advice. I am not your financial advisor. Okay. This is for educational purposes only. I don't know who you are. I don't know your personal situation. Okay. So you should speak with your financial professional about gold and silver, and about how much you should have in your particular portfolio for your particular situation, right? So there's that. Now, I want to move on and talk to, because we're not going to be here for ever. I got to keep moving through these things. The energy war behind AI. Okay, let's talk about this, because most people are completely missing this part. Everybody is talking about AI. Okay, everybody is talking about AI, but very few people are talking about the energy that is required to power AI. Okay. AI requires massive data centers, it requires electricity infrastructure, it requires cooling systems, semiconductors, rare earth minerals, oil, silver, right? I mean, but it requires these things. And this is one reason why energy has become such a strategic issue globally. Okay. This is bigger than oil. Okay. People think that energy only means gas prices. That's just like a sliver of it. Okay. That's just like a sliver of it. And also, people think oil only means gas prices for your car, for trucks and things like that. No, no, no. It also includes AI. It's energy, right? So, anyway, it's not just gas prices. Energy now means AI dominance. It now means technological infrastructure. It now means military capability and economic power. And so, therefore, whoever controls energy, whoever controls data infrastructure, whoever controls the semiconductor supply chains, that is who is going to hold massive influence in this next economic era. Okay. So, this is why you see governments moving a little bit differently. Okay. This is why we see increased infrastructure spending. This is why we see competition over minerals. This is why there are AI races between nations, okay? This is why there is rising geopolitical tension because there are countries that are fighting to be the one who is going to dominate in this next era. And if you're going to dominate in this next era, you must have a large portion or control much of the energy. Okay. So this is not random. Okay. Countries are positioning themselves. And so what should we, particularly if you invest, and I don't know who wouldn't be investing, what investors should notice is this. Again, we don't panic, okay? We notice, right? So we are paying attention to sectors that involve energy. We are paying attention to sectors that involve power infrastructure. We are um, we are paying attention to semiconductors. We're paying attention to cybersecurity. We're paying attention to data centers. Why? Because the money is already flowing there. That's where the money is flowing. So in this next era, and if you want to be economically, and I'm not going to say everything is 100% secure, right? But if you want to be all right, then I suggest that you are involved in these areas in some way. And particularly if you don't work in these areas, make money in these areas to manage and create this kind of stuff or whatever the case may be, then invest in these areas, okay? Because the money is already flowing there. All right. Now, let's move to the next topic that I want to talk about, which is the commercial real estate problem. Okay. I want to talk about this because this is something that has not gone away. Commercial real estate, especially office buildings, it's still an issue. Okay. Many office buildings are still struggling because the remote work changed demand. Um, Remote work changed the demand permanently. All right. And so, even though there was a call when the president got into office about going back to the buildings, and this was particularly for government, right? That's he made that call for government. But when he made that call, it wasn't just government that were going back to the buildings. Other corporations then made the same call after he did and were like, people need to come back to the offices, right? However, the occupancy still remains very low in many cities, right? There have been a lot of people who have gone back to the buildings, but not enough. There are still many, many people who are working remote, okay? And with occupancy remaining low, that is a problem, obviously, for people who own these buildings, right? Now, they could think about refinancing, right? But even refinancing debt is becoming difficult right now due to the high rates. Okay. Inflation is up, right? It means these to get refinancing really is, getting a loan and things like that redone. And the rates are high. Okay. And there is the potential for them to remain high. So here's the key: banks hold huge exposure to these properties. And here's why this matters. If commercial properties are struggling, okay, then banks are going to tighten the lending, right? Because people are struggling. They can't have struggling people taking out loans, right? The more they tighten, businesses are going to struggle to borrow. Now, regional banks are going to feel pressure because, people are like, I can't get loans from these national banks. Let me try the regional banks because the regional banks are a little bit friendlier, supposedly, right? So the regional banks are going to feel pressure. The local economy is going to weaken. And this affects more than buildings. This affects credit availability, right? This affects jobs. This affects business growth. This affects all kinds of things. And the bigger issue, right? If the bigger issue is that people think if the headlines aren't talking about it anymore, then it is not a problem. The problem is gone, it's been resolved, it's been fixed, right? But no, it has not been. This particular problem has not been fixed. And sometimes the problems just move quietly, right? Nobody's paying attention to it, it is undetected. The commercial real estate pressure is still sitting underneath the system. Okay. So if you are investing in real estate investment trusts, you have to be very, very mindful in this season. It's not that you can't invest in real estate investment trusts, but now you have to really look at what kind that you're investing in. It would behoove you to look at um, real estate investment trusts that that are invested in data centers, right? That's what I was saying. Where is the money flowing? It would behoove you to look at real estate investment trusts that are invested in like nursing homes or assisted living, um, and that kind of thing. Why? Last week I talked about how the boomers, more of them now are leaving the workforce, right? Many of them will downsize. Um, some of them by choice, some of them not by choice, right? So again, where is the money flow going, right? Where is the money flow going? All right. So Luke 14:28 says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost? Why stewardship studies Wide stewardship studies infrastructure, sustainability, long term pressure, not just appearances, not just what things look like right now, okay? Because there are a lot of things that are going on underneath the surface that we need to be aware of. So, the big picture is, let me connect this for you. Right now, what we're seeing: global monetary shifts, energy repositioning, infrastructure pressure, AI acceleration, and banking system stress. None of this is random, people. None of it is random. The system is restructuring. Okay? Our governments know this because they're positioning themselves to dominate in this next economic era. Okay? But most of the people are distracted while all of this is going on. Okay? So how do we as kingdom citizens, how should we respond? All right, number 1, please, y'all. I'm about saying this every week now. Stop consuming constant distraction. Just stop consuming it. Noise destroys discernment. Noise, the distraction, causes a lot of division. And that's exactly what the powers that be want. If the people continue to remain divided, we can continue doing what we're doing. They won't even notice because they're too busy fighting themselves. This is not a new strategy, okay? This is not a new strategy. This is a strategy from Bible days, okay? If you can get the your opposing um country or whatever, whoever group or whatever that you're going against, if you can get them to start fighting one another, then you can do what you're doing over here undetected, right? And you can come out on top. This is not a new strategy, okay? Yah has even used that strategy to help the Israelites win battles, okay? It's called confusing the enemy. All right. Because a united people, a people who are and united doesn't mean you agree on everything. I think that's the problem these days is that we think that being united means that we agree on everything, we move the same, we talk the same 100%, right? That is not what that is, right? So they know that if the people are not unified and the people are fighting against one another, we can carry on with our grand plan, right, to dominate, knowing that it's going to hurt a lot of the people. We don't care about them anyway, right? Because the people are our enemy. If they ever come together and they really get catch on and get a clue to what is going on, they will become our enemy. We will no longer be in control. Okay. So we have to stop consuming this constant distraction because it is destroying our discernment. It really is. Number two, we have to build financial stability. This is something else that I keep saying week after week after week. And even though I'm saying it every week, there is still a whole lot of you who are not heeding the word. Okay. This is a season where you must reduce any unnecessary debt. This is a season where you must reduce your dependency on debt, credit cards and loans and all of those things. You have to get yourself to a place, you have to work to get yourself to a place where you are not dependent on that or even dependent on the government. Okay? Benefits and all that look great now, but you see what, they kind of shook those up. That was all the talk not too long ago. And if you think that they're done with that, they ain't done with it. Okay? They've been quiet about it for now, but they're not done with it. So we have to reduce this unnecessary debt. We have to reduce dependency. We have to reduce financial fragility. What does that mean? Listen, if you don't have $1,000 in an emergency fund, you are in grave trouble. Now, $1,000, let me tell you something. It's a little bit, it is not a lot, and it is not the goal, but it is a start, right? If you don't have $1,000 in your emergency account, you're in trouble because anytime an emergency happens, your tires blow, the refrigerator goes out, the furnace goes out, the whatever, the air conditioning goes out. The reason why that number 1,000 is the go-to when we're saying, hey, that should be your first goal in your emergency fund um is because most emergencies, small to mid-size emergencies, cost up to $1,000. Okay. Or half of that, or close to that, or whatever the case may be. Right. So, I mean, listen, I had to get a new rim the other day. And this was on the lower end, right? Because I don't care. I don't need the latest and greatest and the most shiniest or the most whatever looking or whatever. And that was a couple $100, over a couple $100. Okay. So listen, people, we have to get to a place where we are financially solvent. All right. We have to The next thing that we have to do, number three, is that we have to study where money is moving. We sit here and we just say things, well, I guess this is just my lot in life. I guess this is what, this is just what y'all has for me. I'm not meant to be wealthy. I'm not meant to be. And wealthy is subjective. Okay. So when I say wealthy, don't think that I'm automatically talking about millions and billions. Okay. Because wealthy is a lot more than money. But anyway, many of us are thinking like, that's just not, in the cards for me, this, that, or the other. What? Everything is here. We're just not paying attention to it. We're paying attention to all the wrong things. We have to study where the money is moving. We don't study emotionally, we study strategically. All right. But this brings me to number four. We need to increase our skills and flexibility. So adaptability matters. We don't live in the era that our grandparents, my grandparents, this would be my children's great grands and my grandchildren's great great grands, right? We don't live in that era anymore where you can go work a job, be there for 30, 40 years, 50 years, or whatever, and then there's a pension and this and that. We don't live in that anymore, right? So we must be adaptable and we must be open to, increasing our skills, honing our skills, learning new skills, right? Because that will help us to transition when we need to. Okay. We also need to increase our money following skills. Okay. Learning to follow the money. And the Holy Spirit can show you that. I'm not saying you have to be a guru or you have to be, someone like myself who knows quite a bit about money. You don't have to be that, right? But you need to have a basic understanding. And what we all need is just discernment and wisdom from the Holy Spirit. But when you are distracted with all that other stuff, right, that affects your discernment. The fifth thing that I'm going to say is that you need to stay grounded spiritually. So I was already walking into that point, because discernment requires wisdom, it requires clarity, it requires discipline. It does not require fear. Okay. Ain't no time for being afraid around here. Okay. We have to look at what's going on, assess it, and then determine how do we move. So, if this episode is helping you see the world a little bit differently, then it's time to go deeper. I am going to highly encourage you to get my book. It's called Stop Begging God for Money. The book is about stewardship, it's about mindset, it's about financial discipline, it's about kingdom positioning. Okay. And you can get your copy at authorlexijohnson.com. Again, that's authorlexijohnson.com. You can also get it on Amazon or online, anywhere books are sold. Okay. Um, but I would much prefer if you get it from our website. If you know, you know. Okay. If you know, you know. Um, so let's see here. What else do I want to share with you before I close? Or as I close, I should say. Um, the loudest headlines are not the most important ones, are usually not the most important headlines. They're not. Okay. The people who build wealth in transition seasons are usually the people who are paying attention while everybody else is distracted, while everybody else is fussing and fighting, while everybody else is, paying attention to celebrity news and, whatever else. Those people will be reacting to what's going on. But you, okay, because you have been watching me and you've been watching today, you are going to stay aware. All right. You are going to stay aware. You're going to stay disciplined and you're going to stay positioned. All right. So that's a wrap for today's episode. I don't even believe I said, well, let the name and the number of the episode, but it's episode 73. And, we just talking about some stuff people ain't paying attention to. All right. But I am Dr. Lexi Johnson, and I am reminding you to produce, to multiply, to dominate, because that, as kingdom citizens, is what we have been called to do, even in our finances. So we'll see you next week. We'll be back on our regular day on Thursday at 12:30 Eastern. God bless, and we'll see you then. Maybe. I'm trying to play this outro, but it don't seem like it want to play. It won't play. You know what I'm gonna do? Play the intro. Y'all, I'm gonna get this outro thing right. I told y'all I am on a new platform. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out though. That was for a whole different podcast, wasn't it? Let's see. This is so funny. This is so funny. Yeah, it doesn't want to play the actual outro it should be playing. So anyway, I'll see y'all next time. All right. Go have yourselves a great day. We'll see you another time. Bye.